Ladies, welcome, welcome, welcome. So it is the first week of March, and we got some great stuff for this month in terms of our training. We are going to, now some of the ladies answered the poll and they wanted some parenting tips, some self-care, and I thought a little bit. I don't know the specific needs of you all, so I hope you all will help me out here a little bit, but I know there are plenty of moms with boys, and if you don't know, I have 3 boys, and it's challenging for a mom to raise sons. So I am going to start with a book on discipline. On discipline, and it is actually a older book, but it's a wonderful resource, and it is going to stretch your knowledge of discipline. Let me try to show you. Let's see. There we go. The Discipline book. Okay, Dr. Sears. If you're not familiar with Dr. Sears, I know him from sleep. So when my first and second were babies, I would refer to him to help me with sleep, because my daughter, she didn't sleep. That first year, that child would not sleep, okay? I feel like I tried a lot of stuff. She wouldn't sleep. So she has grown into sleep. That's a different issue altogether. So anyway, we're going to talk a little bit about discipline. So let's start off. They give some foundations, right? They do talk about some of the different styles or parenting styles, and I'll touch on them. I will touch on them, okay? And they give some pros and cons to them. I don't want to give a whole lot of attention to them, because realistically, as a parent, and as you'll see, what it really all comes down to is knowing your child. Knowing your child and tailoring your interactions with them based on that knowledge, right? Based on your love for them. So it all really just comes from a place of love. So the styles of discipline are the authoritarian style, right? I'm the boss, I'm the parent, you're the child, you do what I say, that's it. Okay, that's in a nutshell. Then you have your communication approach, where we're just going to talk everything through, and I try to address, I guess, more the psychology of our relationship. And again, this does have its place, but not all the time. The behavior modification approach, this is timeouts, positive reinforcement, natural consequences. Again, it works some of the time. And then the attachment approach, which is the primary focus in this book. And they do tie in all the other forms of discipline styles in it, because like I said, at the end of the day, you have to know your child best and, have figured out what is going to work for you. So I'm just going to put a few notes in here as we go, right? Discipline styles. Booyah. Feel free to comment as we go. Ask your questions as usual. All right, the attachment approach is just knowing and connecting with your child. That's the attachment approach. I know my child. I invest time for us to build and form a relationship with each other, a closeness and attachment to each other. And then their behavior is driven by their desire to keep that relationship strong. So they want to be obedient. Right? So pretty much the book gives you top 10 guidelines, and some of them are a little bit vague. I will say that some of them are a little vague, so I'm going to go through them and we'll see how it goes. Again, I always welcome your questions, your concerns. So we'll see what goes, what we get. So get connected early. Get connected early. Now, again, this is dependent on the ages of your children. Mine's, I have double digits, and then I have a 2-year-old. It's my youngest. And get connected early just means spending time with your child, getting to know them, playing together, enjoying each other. And that helps to build and strengthen the connection between you and your child, right? That healthy time, the healthy, fun time together. The second point is, I'm going to put that, get connected early. I'll just put the points in here. I don't have a cheat sheet out yet. All right, so I'm going to just go ahead and enter these points as I go through them, and we'll see if that's helpful. All right, get connected early. Point 2, know your child. Know your child. Again, this really comes down to you taking time to learn them, taking time to get to know them, taking time to interact, to listen, to observe. For some parents, it's easier than others. I'm blessed to be able to be a homemaker, and I get to spend a lot of time with my children, especially, my younger ones, right? My 2-year-old and even my 4-year-old, because he's only in part-day school. So I definitely get more hours in a day to get to know them, to see their temperaments, right? To see what ticks them off, to see what things they really enjoy and what makes them happy. To understand some of, the behavior difficulties that, are presenting themselves now. And it also gives me an opportunity to address those on the spot. So depending on your schedule, depending on, your work schedule, the hours you have to keep, you may not have the same luxury of time, but the time that you do have, you have to make it count. You have to make it count. I usually do force my children to turn off all screens at certain times just so that I can get that time in with them. Sometimes it's the weekends. My older two, right, they want a tablet or be on a phone or watch TV. And when we turn those things off, it does make it easier to get to know them. All right, point 3, help your child to respect authority. Okay, well, help your child to respect authority, right? So you want to establish a relationship where your children do recognize at home the different levels of authority. It doesn't mean that it has to be cut and dry, very strict, but it is important that the children understand the hierarchy at home, because this is their first example of authority. If we're always our kids' friends, it's not that. If we're always our children's friends, then when they leave, guess what? Police are seen as equal. Teachers can be seen as equals, right? Well, we could just talk. I could just talk to you, however, because that's what I do at home. I just talk to my mom like, we're equals. But we're not equals. It's important to establish some sense of authority, some levels, and the way you do that might differ. And like I said, some of this will be more clear as we go through the book, assuming that we even get through the book. You all might want to shift gears because discipline might not really be the parenting issue you want to address, but I'll just go over some of these basic foundations, right? It's important to help your child respect authority, and you do that by establishing the levels of hierarchy at home, okay? 4, set limits and provide structure, right? So the example they give is, of course, with the young, not of course, they give examples with the younger children, set limits, right? If you have toddler or younger, you're not going to be able to have a whole conversation and give, real explanations about the do's and don'ts or the rules. But what you can do is express to them when things are not safe, right? So you can focus on safety. That would be setting limits. You can play, you can do what you're going to do as long as it's not going to put you in danger. Setting structure would be creating an environment for them to thrive. So for an infant or toddler, a baby-proofed house would be a structured environment because it's a safe place for them to thrive. There aren't going to be constant threats around the house. Now, of course, depending on your child's age, these are going to be different, right? The limits, meaning the rules, are going to be different. I'll give an example. Depending on your, what you're comfortable with and what you know about your child, the limits that you set might be, or the rules that you set might be tight, or they might be a little lenient, but they are in place. And then the structure that you provide, again, is the environment for them to thrive or have difficulty. All right, the next one, expect obedience. This might sound crazy, y'all, but I have seen it too many times where you get tired. You just get tired. You get tired of repeating yourself. You get tired. You get flustered, right, with the process of disciplining your child. Or if you have multiples, disciplining your multiple children, right? After the end of a long day or early on Saturday morning, you just still feel worn out from the week. You don't feel like being consistent. You don't feel like saying it one more time. You don't feel like executing the consequences, perhaps, for something that was clearly laid out. I get the tiredness. But what they're saying here is we still have to expect our children to be obedient. In our spirits, we have to still expect them to be obedient. That has to be the expectation for them. That even though they won't do it all the time, I still expect that you will do it. Because when I stop expecting you to be obedient, that's when we have problems. It's almost like I'm putting out some invisible scent that says, hey, you do what you want because I don't expect you to do the right thing anyway, right? We as parents do have magical powers. Can I use that? We have magical powers. Okay. We need to expect obedience from our children. 6, we need to model discipline. Ooh, right? We need to model it. So, yes, that means that we have to live somewhat disciplined lives ourselves. We need to be women of integrity, meaning that if we say something is supposed to be a certain way, then it needs to be reflected in what we do and what we say. So if I tell my kids their rooms need to be clean, guess what should be the case when they come to my room? Exactly. It should be clean as well. So modeling discipline, modeling self-control, modeling temperance. These are all ways that we model discipline, right? We model, right? I model self-discipline in my eating. Like that's a difficult area for me, but I can't look at my kids and tell them, hey, put all that sugar down just for me to go in the kitchen and pull out my secret stash and just gobble, 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 gobble. So, all right, I'm going to leave that alone. 7, nurture your child's self-confidence. Nurture your child's self-confidence. Now, I don't know. I'll be honest, early on in my parenting years, even before I was a parent, I was not a natural encourager. I'm not saying I was a downer or, wasn't able to give a compliment, wasn't able to say anything nice, but it didn't come naturally to me to just, point out the great things that people were doing. And I remember after getting married, actually, I remember praying and saying, Lord, I can see that this is something that really fills my husband when I praise him, when I encourage him. And I had to pray for the Lord to help me in that area, because I really struggle a lot of times to say things that would lift him up. Whether it was work or honestly even at home. And the Lord did answer that prayer, and I find myself being easier year after year, with building up my family with my words. I am more mindful about what I put out there, and I'm even more mindful about how I describe their misbehavior, because that plays a role in it too, how we describe their misbehavior, as well as those things that are positive that they do well. So nurturing their self-confidence is one of the foundational behaviors of promoting a solid foundation for good discipline. All right. Right. You could be a builder or you could be a breaker. So you want to be a builder of their self-esteem, and then you also want to keep them in company of other builders, in the company of other people that are going to build them up and encourage them. The next one is shape your child's behavior. Okay. The example they give is like a garden, and I think it's beautiful. When they say shape your child's behavior, it is essentially saying, you are given a beautiful garden. There are things that are already growing in there. And as a gardener, right, the gardener can plant new flowers, vegetables, fruits, trees in the garden. The gardener is able to uproot the weeds. The gardener is able to prune, right? Just snip off areas so that the whole plant can flourish. The gardener is the one that is tending, right? Being attentive to the growth and stepping in as needed. But the gardener realizes, right, that they are just one part of the equation. And I think the beauty in that is realizing that we get to be a significant part of the equation, but we're not the only part in the equation of shaping our children's behavior. Okay. I'll be honest, of my four, definitely some things are easier with some of my children and some things are much harder. And knowing my children helps me to shape them in different areas based on what they need or don't need, right? Some of my children are prone to certain misbehaviors. Some are prone to different ones, right? I hope I'm making myself clear about what I'm saying. We as gardeners see the potential in them. We see the beauty. We also see where the weeds are coming in, and we help to keep them in line, right? Keep them moving on the right path. All right. Raise kids who care. And this one is primarily talking about raising our children to be sensitive. And this is going to be a common thread throughout the book. One of the keys to helping our children to do well in their relationships is by helping them to learn sensitivity towards themselves and towards others. You might think of it as empathy, but sensitivity is being morally inclined, right? Being sensitive to doing the right things and being aware of when they're doing the wrong things. Okay, so I guess being sensitive in a sense to have, a sense of right and wrong, but also sensitivity to those who are around us. The give and take of our environments. Okay, so raise kids who care. And we do that by expressing the same sensitivity to them, right? We have to be sensitive to their needs. And this is the last one, talk and listen. And, some of this ties in because when people feel valued, right, when they feel heard, it helps. It helps a relationship when people feel like you care about what's going on with them. And sometimes, because our children, again, going back to what type of relationship you have with your children, it might be easier or more difficult to be attentive to them, to listen, and even having these conversations, the talking part too. You don't want to be deaf to their concerns or deaf to their needs. I know in my house there's a lot of complaining and whining, and yes, you definitely have to filter through all those things, the whining, the begging, the pleading. But they do have, important things to share if you are able to listen. And then being able to talk to them is equally as important, being able to talk to them in a way that they can understand it. It's easy for us to treat our children like adults, to expect them to do things that adults do, to expect them to understand in an adult way. But our children, it's, again, different ages, different stages. One 8-year-old won't be at the same level that another 8-year-old is going to be at. So again, knowing your child and being able to talk to them in an age-appropriate way that they can receive. A way that they can receive. And then being able to listen in a way that really gets to the heart of the matter. I know sometimes, all my children's ages, they're sharing their concerns with me in a way that they understand it, and I often have to my brain is really working to try to understand exactly where the problem is or exactly where their focus is, because the way they understand it is very different than the way I understand it. But the more questions I ask, I usually am able to get to the heart of the matter, right? And it feels good. It feels good to be able to connect with them on that level. And again, it improves that bonding, that attachment that you two have with each other, which only helps overall with discipline, because the goal is to develop a connection that's strong enough with your child over years. So it's something that's a continual process, so that they will want to please you. They will want to be obedient. They will want to mimic, what you do, how you think about things. So, is it ever too late to be a better parent? I think that's too broad. Let me bring it down a little. Is it ever too late to learn better techniques for disciplining your child? There are definitely going to be stages that are easier than others. So it's always easier if some of these things you're able to start when they're younger. But that is hard. And I'm just going to put my quick 2 cents in here about our own upbringings. Often we default to what we grew up with. So if our parents had the authoritarian discipline style where they were like, I'm the parent, you're the child, you do what I say, you don't ask any questions, that's it. It's very likely that that's the style that we're going to start with our children. And whether it's successful or not, a lot of times we may stick with it because we don't know a better way. But I hope that through the process of this month's topics, maybe through your own reading, maybe through interacting with other parents, other mothers, you'll begin to grow and see different styles and techniques. You start to say, I really want to do better. I really want to incorporate some new things and see how they go. It may be an uphill battle because it's going to take a little bit longer to shape some of the thought processes, some of the habits. It may even take longer for you again to get back to where you and your child are honestly connecting with one another before you can implement some of the new things that you're learning. But I just want to put out there, be encouraged. Be encouraged. Because they love you, you love them, and if you are working from a place of love and you're stretching yourself to grow, you're stretching yourself to model some things for your children, I mean, that's the best you can do. That's really the best you can do. I mean, you're providing a safe environment, you're meeting their needs, and in terms of disciplining and parenting, I say do the best you can. Do the best you can. But if I had to leave you with two takeaways, I would say that the strongest are just to know your child, because they change. Know your child. Know your child. And by knowing your child is going to make all the other steps much easier. Know them and really build a connection with them. Spend the time to get to know what they're into. Spend some time, fooling around with their gadgets, listening to their music, getting to know their friends. All these things are ways to help you build a connection in order to really set up a strong foundation for discipline. So that is my time, ladies. I hope I have dropped some good points for you. Some of these are going to be familiar, some of these are not. Please leave me your questions. I will go back and check them and answer them. And as we go throughout the month of March, I am going to try to address some different parenting concerns. We may do the self-care, and just a heads up, this month we are going to have a sexual health expert talking to us. Yes, talk about self-care. Hey. All right, ladies, so y'all don't want to miss that. That's going to be March 22nd at our live. All right, have a great evening. See you soon.